me set the tone of today's video with a quote. Let me know if you agree with it. Here it is. Tarkov has done irreparable damage to the games industry. Everything needs to be a what do you call them? Extraction shooter. Those are the words of an exasperated man. That man is from New Blood Interactive. He's the founder. His name is David Oshry. And while he does go on to poke some fun at himself, basically saying, I'm an old boomer, I'm not the target audience of this game, he did say what many people are actually feeling, that just like with the Battle Royales, we see yet another groan-worthy industry trend-chasing event where everything has got to be a bloody extraction shooter. I mean, even Respawn was making a Titanfall extraction shooter before it was cancelled, because hey, Titanfall can't be Titanfall. But recently, something happened to change this story a little bit. Marathon happened, but then Arc Raiders happened, and Arc Raiders is getting traction in a way that Marathon has not, and figuring out why I've came to a hell of a realization. So, let's get the show on the road. Tarkov is an extraction game, but not all extraction games are like Tarkov. Extraction is essentially just this: games where a player enters a level, attempts to gather valuable resources, and then extracts those back to some sort of meta progression layer. Tarkov fits that, but so does Repo, Lethal Company, and Helldivers 2. Each of those does well off the absurd wacky comedy you get when you've got these messy little meaty things called human beings interacting in a group with a whole bunch of interesting systems. That's basically what makes the genre kinda cool. So what's different, then, about games like Tarkov or Marathon? Well, simple, right? PvE and PvP. Tension stems from the potential for loss in both, but in PvE, it feels like a loss, while in PvP, it feels like something has been taken from you by another person, and that does not appeal to everyone, but it obviously does appeal to a lot of people, because the tension is second to goddamn none. Anyway, the point is that as Bungie probably noticed when they looked at their majority PvE Destiny audience, talk about Marathon, yeah, not everybody likes the PvP part, but this actually goes deeper. PvE games can naturally coexist. They're inherently more positive sum, but without players, a PvP game is dead. So, of course, our eyes roll at the sight of yet another PvP extraction game. We think they just seem like, oh, another game that's probably going to fail, so why even bother getting excited? Marathon invoked that feeling. Now, to be fair, part of that is just general, breached trust with Bungie, but a lot of it is just the big trend that we've seen this all before with the Battle Royale. But why is it that Marathon invokes that, but Arc Raiders does not? See, here's the thing. Both games just had alphas, but the responses to those alphas could not have been more different. Marathon's alpha lasted just under 2 weeks, and according to Paul Tassi's sources, it actually didn't go as planned. That's actually now true on multiple levels. So first off, it was to be a closed alpha, a closed test, but Bungie allegedly lifted the NDA in an attempt to counter the skeptical reception that they got to the reveal of their game. Now, going a level deeper, it's obviously a true alpha, not just a marketing exercise or a server test, right? And Paul Tassi's sources corroborate that it, again, is a real test of game design and systems. So whenever players who have played the testing version say that Marathon cannot launch like this, they're literally correct. It can't. It's a true alpha. It never should be launched. Now, we all understand why Bungie responded this way, right? They were doing an alpha anyway. They had mixed reception, and they basically thought, seeing is believing, we need people to get footage out there. Just like, say, what EA actually did with Battlefield, in a little bit of a way. But to go back to the story, unfortunately for Bungie, a true alpha often won't make for an explosive marketing coup, because it's true alpha. It's not going to blow people away with its polish. But even then, reactions have been mixed, and they fall into two broad camps. This is what matters. One, it doesn't have enough extraction shooter genre conventions to satisfy genre fans. Problem two, it doesn't have a strong enough hook to pull in non-extraction shooter fans. That's a little bit of a pickle, and those non-extraction shooter fans are in many cases going to be Destiny players. You know, the audience that Bungie actually has. And that is a rough situation for them. And while this is not some sort of huge rejection of the game, Paul Tassi points out there are hundreds of thousands of people trying to get codes, or there were, in the Marathon Discord. What it does is it sets a bad tone. And that is a bad tone that Arc Raiders just exploited. In a way, this is actually just goddamn tragic. So Marathon is effectively where Arc Raiders was in June 2023. It's a small-scale technical test designed to get feedback on the core systems and stability. But Arc Raiders then got the luxury of 2 whole years of iteration ahead of its full launch, which is, going to be this year. Marathon, though, has until September. So not only did Arc have more time, but it also is able to meet those Marathon criticisms head on. Genre fans get what they would expect. There is proximity chat, solo queuing, crafting, and that's only to name a few. But most importantly, the hooks for Arc have actually landed, where it's now not just appealing to the hardcore genre fans. And that's, I think, quite because it's third-person, post-apocalyptic setting, you're heading to the surface for 30 minutes, scavenging what you can, getting back underground before you're killed by other players or big giant robots. It's actually doing enough to hook in other people, and I think it helps that, my God, they have executed their vibe, their visuals, their sound, their graphic design. They've really nailed that. And the response to actually playing this game has been really positive from the people who've got access, especially in the streaming community. There's footage from Shroud, Jack Frags, and the others that are showing off essentially the best of what an extraction game can be. That you get emergent narrative moments of, taking on threats, negotiation with opponents, tense combat, all of that blending together with these photogrammetry built locations that look stunning, and a lo-fi 80s sci-fi aesthetic that they've absolutely nailed. That's strong stuff. But mostly, it's a traditional extraction shooter gameplay that's just been hyper-polished and iterated on. And that makes complete sense, because technically, it really doesn't seem that this thing's changed much since the early footage in 2022. Obviously, behind the scenes it has, that's the whole point. They may look fairly similar to us as players, just comparing frames of trailers, but all those years of work actually went somewhere. And that's what brings us to the other Marathon comparison: reveals going poorly. You see, here's the funny thing. Embark, the developer behind Arc Raiders, initially revealed it as a PvE extraction game, but they then delayed it to work in the finals, and then they pivoted Arc over to PvP after basically doing PvP playtests internally and them literally just having more fun. Now, I get that from their perspective, but that was a bit of a bold thing. You told people it would be PvE, so it's not surprising that their re-reveal of that as a PvP game completely backfired. I saw goddamn rage everywhere back, June 2023. It was just that perfect mix of disappointment and anger, but it actually turns out that in video games, polish actually does make the difference. In removing PvE, Arc took the thing that hyped people the most away. And that's the point where these two games diverge. Arc gets so much polish that it stands out beyond its genre, basically convincing people that no, this actually is worth paying attention to. Marathon, though, well, it gets an NDA lifted, revealing a game too early in development to stand above its genre. That's absolutely going to sting for the developers. Just think what they've been through, being at Bungie this last while with all the chaos. But as much as that's true, we are skeptical for a reason. And this is the big learning, because it goes deeper than just trend chasing. Nexon acquired Embark, of course being the Arc Raiders developers, in 2021. And it's easy to read the change to Arc Raiders as a, hey, make the game PvP, make more money, just like Tarkov, we're Nexon, money me now. Yeah, you could read it as that. But part of the distinction between PvP and PvE extraction games is that PvP creates more potential for interesting gameplay. That's basically just because it's hard to make AI so good that the AI can top the sheer chaos created by other players. That's also why Dave Oshry was kind of, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, mad about things. You see, that quote I was talking about at the top of the video, that was him reacting to Hidetaki Miyazaki from Software, and the fact that he really likes Tarkov. Yes, Miyazaki loves Tarkov. Talking about the Duskbloods, which is the new FromSoft game, he told IGN that the network functionality and the game design were particularly interesting, quote, in Tarkov, for example, so I'm basically paying attention to those elements as a creator and a fan of the game. So, yeah, basically, Mr. Elden Ring, Mr. Dark Souls, really likes Tarkov, and that's what he's bringing to the next game. So in one way, the Duskbloods has a similar inspirational lineage, this is where it gets wild, as something like Clara Obscura Expedition 33. That may seem wild, but hold on a second. It's the result of a developer who finds something compelling in the systems of a game that they love, and they want to see what they can do with that. That's what Expedition 33 does to Final Fantasy X. It's what Miyazaki wants to do with Tarkov. It seems to actually come from a genuine place. That may even be why could actually be pretty damn good. I think there's something noble in that, and perhaps, more so in convincing Nintendo to actually pay for that experiment. I'm sure they like the idea of having an extraction. Because there's also the industry component to this. Investors and publishers will think that they have seen this pattern before. By pattern, I mean this. PUBG was the first big battle royale game, right? But it was Fortnite that made it approachable and massively scaled it beyond the hardcore audience. So with that in mind, why did COD and Battlefield ram extraction modes in? Why are the big companies doing extraction? Why are ex-veteran AAA developers on the whole west coast of America all funded by random VCs to make extraction games these days? Well, the same reason, right? If PUBG is Tarkov, then we have not seen the Fortnite equivalent. And that's why there's so much money behind this genre. To you and me, it's yet more companies doing stupid trend chasing. It's another rush of just companies slinging minimum viable products at us. That's the big point. That's why we roll our eyes, right, at, oh my god, Realm Royale, wow, another BR, that's just what I needed. And if you ask me, that's the difference between the highlight games of this video, of Marathon and Arc Raiders. Basically, Marathon has went down the way that it did because it feels like a minimum viable product. It right now is an alpha in the truest sense, even though it apparently has got to come out in September. Arc Raiders does not feel like that. It does not feel like a minimum viable product because we know what it looked like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we know that they've just relentlessly honed it. That doesn't feel like something that's just been shat out to try to capture some of a genre, and that's why, as players, we have responded differently. In a world full of skepticism and lacking in authenticity, the way to cut through, funnily enough, is to just be fucking earnest. And it seems that's what this game's managed to do. As much as the Arc Raiders feelings are good, I do want to be clear, it kind of feels like we're reaching a tipping point here. If only because we're now seeing non-extraction companies like, say, FromSoft and Bungie trying their hands at doing extraction games. Now, this might all be driven by the fact that Tarkov is finally releasing its, full version this year. Yeah, it's finally not a beta. And that means that it will actually be on Steam for the first time as well. So there's really never been a better chance to break out before that big incumbent ends up in Steam. Arc Raiders is appealing to the Tarkov audience by giving them a similar experience, right? They're, proximity chat, things that, say, Bungie are not doing. It's giving them the similar things, but in a new setting and with supplementary mechanics and movement and all of that make their game experience stand out. Marathon, though, is trying to reach the console audience that made Destiny a success, and to do that, they're trying to do an approachable take on the genre. Hence, them disagreeing, right, with the genre hardcores and things like proximity chat. That means they cannot count on the hardcore audience. They're literally not trying to appeal to them. But big picture, we might be at the crest of a wave here. If you account for pandemic shutdown, we're at the point where the funding that started so many different extraction shooters is finally bearing fruit. That means a bunch are going to be coming out. But if these massive games do not see the expected investor returns, perhaps as fast as investors want them, and it turns out that Tarkov really is the ceiling of the extraction shooter, well, then maybe extraction shooters will end up like flight sims or hidden object games, where, well, there's tiny dedicated indies and, 1 or 2 big players in the scene with not that much in between. I would not be surprised if that happens. It very much could be the case that hunger for the next version of the Battle Royale was misplaced. That may be what they want, but that really, right, if you think about your Fortnites and a lot of those games, what are they doing? Well, they're pivoting towards user-generated content. They are going for the business model of tomorrow. It's not a business model that I like, but it's what they're going for. Meanwhile, you could say these trend chasers are trying to replicate something that happened, 8 years ago? Which may not be the best play for today's market. And speaking of plays for today's market, well, Xbox just went and made everything expensive, including video games. So Nintendo have done it, Xbox have done it, everyone else is going to do it. So if you want to know what's going on, watch this video next.